In the cold emergency room, the pale white fluorescent light shone down on the ashen face of a man. His chest lay still, eyes tightly shut, skin gray like ash. The doctors shouted, "Clear!" Prepare to shock again. "No, no. Dear God, please save him." A woman's voice cried out, trembling, shattering, a jolt of electricity. His whole body shot up, then fell back down like a log. The monitor still carried that deadly, unbroken sound. But strangely, while the body lay motionless, his soul felt as if it was leaving the cold bed. A gentle breeze passed by. He opened his eyes and saw his own body lying there. The doctors were struggling to bring him back. His wife burst into tears, her trembling hand clenching his finger that had already begun to grow cold. "What's happening to me?" he asked himself in panic. The whole room tilted, the light spread into a dim halo. An invisible force pulled him away into the distance. David Miller, 38 years old, lived in the state of Ohio. He was a typical American man, tall, sturdy, once a high school football player, now a manager at an electrical equipment distribution company. He had a wife, Sarah, a gentle elementary school teacher, and a 7-year-old daughter, Emily, whose blue eyes were as clear as an autumn morning. On the surface, David's life seemed quite stable. A suburban home with a white wooden fence, a pickup truck in the garage, weekend nights watching football with neighbors, and every Sunday morning, the whole family went to church. Yet behind the polite smiles and steady job, David carried an emptiness inside. He was the kind of man who rarely spoke about feelings, keeping everything to himself. Sometimes, when Sarah hugged him from behind and asked, "Are you okay, David? I feel like you've been so pensive lately," he only gave a short reply. "It's nothing. I'm just a little tired," but in truth, his heart was in turmoil. Work was stressful, financial pressure weighed heavily. Recently, the company cut staff, and David had to work twice as hard to keep his position. His body was no longer as strong as it used to be. Sharp chest pains came and went, but he deliberately ignored them. Sarah had pleaded, "You should see a doctor, David." "I don't think this is good." He forced a smile, patting his wife's shoulder. "I'm fine. Men, you know, just minor aches and pains." But it was that very carelessness that led him to that fateful moment in the emergency room. That evening, the Ohio sky was heavy with clouds, thunder rumbling in the distance. David sat on the sofa, the warm yellow light of the living room reflecting on his weary face. Emily ran up, climbing into her father's lap. Daddy, tomorrow I have a performance at school. You have to come watch me, okay?" David smiled, patting his daughter's head. "Of course. I'll sit in the front row, cheering for my princess." A simple sentence, yet it became a haunting promise throughout his journey between life and death. That night, when Sarah was already asleep, David sat alone on the porch. The air was cold. The wind carried the smell of damp earth. He watched the raindrops fall softly on the porch roof, his heart heavy as stone. A strange premonition flashed through his mind. What if tomorrow I'm no longer here? He shivered, trying to shake it off, then went back inside to hold his wife and child. But he had no idea that only a few hours later, that foreboding would come true. The fateful event. The next morning, the sky was still gray, drizzle falling as if it would never end. David drove to work, heavy-hearted. He was used to hiding his exhaustion, but his body was increasingly rebelling fiercely. Around noon, while giving a presentation in the conference room, a sudden, sharp pain gripped his chest. He froze, breathing fast, sweat pouring like rain. "David? Are you okay?" a colleague asked in surprise. He forced a smile. I just need some water." But before he could finish, he collapsed onto the floor. Everything erupted into chaos. Shouts filled the room. Someone called 911. His heart pounded wildly, then tightened, as if squeezed by an invisible hand. In that moment, David caught a glimpse of the terrified faces around him before darkness swallowed everything. When David opened his eyes again, he found himself lying in a dazzlingly bright room. The sharp smell of disinfectant, hurried footsteps, the doctor's urgent voice. Heart stopped. prepare to shock. Hurry, 200 joules, clear. A powerful current slammed into his chest. His entire body jolted upward, then dropped back down. But strangely, he felt no pain. Instead, he felt as if he were floating on water, weightless, freed from gravity. He looked down and saw his body lying motionless on the bed. "My God, is that me?" David whispered, but no one could hear. The doctor shouted, "No pulse! Keep compressions. Don't give up." Sarah rushed forward, her eyes blurred with tears. "David, you have to wake up. You can't leave me and Emily. You promised." Her voice broke like tearing flesh. David wanted to run to her to say, "I'm here, Sarah. Don't cry." But his hand passed right through her, as though he were nothing but smoke. The monitor's sound stretched into a flat line. Beep! In an instant, the room faded. A powerful force pulled David upward. He panicked, struggled, but it was useless. Then suddenly, everything became still. He floated near the ceiling, looking down at the chaotic scene. The doctors still fought to resuscitate him. Sarah had fallen to her knees beside him, her tears dripping onto his cold hand. David was dazed. His ears no longer caught human voices, but instead a deep, resonant sound like a distant melody. White light spread all around, not blinding, but strangely warm. "Is this death?" he wondered, both afraid and curious. He no longer heard clear shouting, only rhythmic echoes, like the sound of waves from a faraway sea. The scene below blurred, but the surrounding light grew brighter, enveloping him. The heaviness and pain were gone. Only weightlessness remained, as if flying through the air. The smell of disinfectant vanished, replaced by a gentle, sweet fragrance, like the apple pie his mother used to bake. His mouth filled with a pure sweetness, like a drop of honey, melting on his tongue. Amidst the vast space, he suddenly heard a warm voice. "David, you cannot go yet. You still have something to do." He startled. Whose voice was that? Why did it sound so familiar? Suddenly, out of the light, a figure appeared, an elderly man with silver hair, kind eyes. David was stunned. "Father, is it you? But you've been gone for years." The man smiled, not answering directly, only extending his hand toward him. "Come." "There is something you must see." David trembled. He wanted to cling to the emergency room, to hold Sarah and Emily, but the pull of the light was too strong. He was led away, stepping into an unexpected journey. David followed his father, or rather, allowed his father to lead him. With each step, the ground beneath his feet seemed to dissolve, replaced by a soft band of light. No ceiling, no hospital, only a tunnel of light stretched wide, endlessly deep. That light wasn't harsh, but gentle, like an embracing arm wrapping around him, covering his entire being. David felt soothed, as though every pain he had ever endured was being comforted away. He thought to himself, "If this is death, then it isn't as frightening as I imagined." Beside him, his father turned and smiled. "There is still much you don't understand. Go on, and you will see." The tunnel opened. Before David lay an immense expanse, breathtakingly beautiful. A field stretched endlessly, the sky a deep blue, but not like any earthly sky. It radiated a gentle light that seemed to merge with every cell of his body. In the distance were figures. They glowed like tiny lanterns, moving gracefully. As David drew closer, he realized, "Oh God, that's Grandma!" he exclaimed, eyes wide. An elderly woman, silver-haired with the same gentle eyes he remembered, was smiling at him. She reached out and touched his cheek, and David distinctly felt her warmth, even though he no longer had a real body. "My dear, at last you are here." Tears streamed down, but strangely, in this world, tears dissolved into tiny sparks of light that floated upward. "Grandma, I missed you so much." "I know, but you cannot stay here. Sarah and Emily still need you." At the mention of his wife and daughter, David's heart clenched. His father led him to a crystal-clear river, The water sparkled like glass, reflecting images. David looked down and was stunned. His life unfolded vividly before him. He saw himself as a child, learning to ride a bike for the first time, falling and scraping his knees, yet still laughing. He saw his rebellious teenage self, shouting at his father, "I don't need anyone telling me what to do," before storming out of the house. He saw Sarah on their wedding day, her eyes shining with love. He saw Emily calling Daddy for the very first time. Every moment replayed like a film, yet without the ability to skip. He had to watch. He had to face them. His father said, "Do you see? In moments of love, you grew, but in moments of selfishness, when you hurt others, you also diminished yourself." David trembled. "I missed so much. I thought earning money, keeping my job, was enough, but I neglected Sarah and Emily." Grandma touched his shoulder gently. "No one is perfect, David. But regret itself is the chance to change." Suddenly, David saw a small figure running toward him. It was Emily, but older, a young teenager. She glowed like a little angel. "Daddy!" her voice echoed. David was stunned. "Emily? What are you doing here?" She beamed. "I'm not." "Really here, Daddy. This is just a way for your heart to understand. I need you to come back. I still have my performance. I still have so many times I want to hold your hand through this life." David fell to his knees, clutching his daughter tightly. He wept, and this time the tears were not light dissolving into air, but raw sorrow spilling over. "I'm sorry. I wasn't there as much as I should have been, but I promise, if I get another chance, I will change." Emily looked at him, her eyes shimmering as though holding the whole universe. "Then go back. Keep that promise." The light around David suddenly grew brighter, as if ready to consume him. His father spoke sternly. "You must decide. Stay here in peace, or return to the world of suffering." Yet also loved David, looked at his father, at his grandmother, then at Emily. His heart felt heavy as stone. To stay meant no more pain, no more worries, but it also meant never holding Sarah again, never seeing Emily grow up. He answered, trembling, "I want to go back. I'm not ready to leave my family." His father nodded gently, pride shining in his eyes. "Good. But remember this, David. To live is not just to exist. To live is to love, to forgive, and to give more than you take." Those words echoed as though etched into his soul. The light exploded, fierce and blinding. David felt himself falling, fast, very fast. David felt himself plummeting at a dizzying speed, as though being pulled into an endless black vortex. The sound vanished, the light dissolved. Only thick, suffocating darkness remained. Suddenly, a searing pain ripped through his chest, as if he were exploding. His breath was yanked back, violent and heavy, as though an entire ocean had been shoved into his lungs. "He's got a rhythm again. The heart is beating," the doctor's tense voice rang out. "Keep monitoring. Don't lose him again." David tried to open his eyes, but his eyelids were unbearably heavy. All he could see was the blinding white light above and blurred figures moving around him. In his ears, the monitor beeped urgently. Beep, 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 each beat pounding like a hammer against his soul. He wanted to scream, "No! I want to stay with Emily. I want to stay there." But his mouth made no sound. Instead of absolute peace, now there was only pain and emptiness. A warm hand clasped his. David turned his head with effort. It was Sarah. Her face was drenched with tears, but her blue eyes shone with hope. "David, can you hear me? You came back. Oh God, thank you." Her voice pierced through the fog in his mind, slowly pulling him back to reality. He felt his wife's trembling hand, felt love flowing into his skin. Tears spilled from his own eyes, real tears this time, hot, rolling down his cheeks. He whispered, his voice hoarse, "I am still here." Sarah collapsed against him, sobbing. "Never leave me, never again." David remained in the ICU for many days. His body was frail, IV marks crisscrossing his arms. Each time he opened his eyes, he saw Sarah sitting there, her eyes swollen from sleepless nights. Sometimes Emily was allowed to visit. The little girl clung to her father, sobbing. "Daddy, I was so scared. I thought you wouldn't come back to me." David pulled his daughter into his arms, kissed her soft, milk-scented hair. "I'm sorry, princess. I made a promise. I will always be here to watch you grow up." The words he spoke were no longer empty promises. They came from the depths of his heart, from the memory of what he had seen at the River of Light. Before, David had been a hard, stoic man, always concealing his feelings. But after his near-death experience, he changed completely. He no longer cared much about titles or massive contracts. He spent more time with Sarah and Emily, eating dinner together, reading bedtime stories, holding his wife's hand while walking under the sunset. One evening, as the three of them sat on the sofa, David suddenly turned to Sarah, his voice trembling. "I saw Dad, I saw Grandma, and even Emily, in another world. They told me I had to come back, because you and our daughter still needed me." Sarah froze. Her tears fell, but they were tears of joy. She squeezed his hand tightly. "You've truly come back, David. Not just your heart, but your soul." Though he knew his decision to return was right, David sometimes longed for that place of light. He missed the peace without pain, his grandmother's embrace, his father's gentle smile. On late nights, he would step onto the porch, gaze at the starry sky, and whisper, "I miss you, Dad. I miss you, Grandma. But I will live well, I promise." In the night wind, there seemed to be a soft, warm whisper in reply, as if reminding him, "We are still here, always watching over you." As time passed, David's health gradually recovered. The doctors told him to change his lifestyle, eat healthy, exercise, avoid stress. But for David, the greatest change wasn't in his routine, it was in his soul. He began to live more slowly. In the mornings, instead of rushing to the office, he sat at the breakfast table sipping coffee with Sarah, listening to Emily's stories about school. In the evenings, he no longer buried himself in paperwork, but stretched out reading books with his daughter, letting laughter fill the house. Sarah looked at her husband, sometimes still surprised, as if living with a new man. She teased gently, "I don't know if I should call you David or David after death." He laughed, squeezing her hand. "Call me David, who knows how to love." One Sunday at the local church, the pastor invited David to stand and share what he had experienced. At first, he hesitated. How could he make others understand that light? How could he describe the feeling of leaving his body, of meeting his father and grandmother again? But when he saw Sarah smiling in encouragement and Emily waving from the front row, he took a deep breath and stepped up to the pulpit. His voice trembled at first, but gradually grew steady. "I died, at least for a few minutes. I saw the world beyond. There was a peace there no words can describe. I met my father, my grandmother. I even saw Emily, my daughter, in another form, reminding me that I could not leave this world yet." The entire room fell silent. A few people dabbed at their tears. He continued, "What I learned is this. We often think we still have plenty of time, but in truth, each passing day is a gift. I had been careless. I had forgotten that love and presence are what matter most. If today were your last day, what would you want to remember? A successful contract, or your daughter's hug, your wife's smile?" After the service, many people came to David. An elderly woman, her hands trembling, took his hand. "My son just died in an accident. Hearing your story gives me peace." "Perhaps he is in that light you spoke of." David embraced her, whispering, "I truly believe so. And he is still watching over you, just as my father and grandmother still watch over me." A young man said, "I was about to give up on everything. But hearing you, I want to go home right now, to hold my wife and children." David smiled, eyes brimming with tears. He knew his near-death experience had not only saved his life, but might save others too. That night, as the family gathered around the dinner table, Emily chattered about school. Sarah smiled warmly. David looked at them, his heart overflowing with gratitude. He lifted his glass of water, his voice deep and tender. "I promise you, Sarah, and you, Emily, from now on, I won't let a single day pass without saying I love you both. I've been given a second chance, and I will not waste it." Sarah burst into tears, but they were tears of joy. Emily threw her arms around her father. "Daddy, I love you too." So much. The house filled with laughter, tears, and a faith that love was stronger than death. One evening, David stepped onto the porch, gazing up at the star-filled sky. He remembered the light, remembered his father, remembered his grandmother. In the wind, he seemed to hear his father's words again. Living is not just existing. Living is to love, to forgive, and to give more than you take. He nodded softly, whispering, "I will live that way. I promise." And somewhere in the vast sky, a warm light seemed to shine down, embracing him, as proof that they were still watching over him. David's story was not just a near-death experience. It was a reminder that every breath we take is a miracle. The most precious things are not money or success, but the hugs, the smiles, the moments we give wholeheartedly to those we love. David returned from the edge of death to tell us this, and perhaps, because of that, we may live differently, starting today. If this story moved you, please leave a comment to share your feelings. Who knows? Your story might touch someone else's heart out there. Don't forget to follow the channel so you won't miss the next touching journeys, because every experience, every tear, can become a light for someone else.